Hi everyone, it's Alexandria Fraser, and you are listening to the Let's Live with Alexandria Fraser podcast. Today I have a special guest, and I'm very excited. She's joining me all the way from England. So if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Amy Humphries, known as probably Rugby with Amy in most sort of channels. And sometimes when people say hello, they say Rugby with Amy rather than my actual name as well. So yeah, I'm a rugby player. I've played rugby since I was 12. And it's now my full-time job. So prior to this, I worked in healthcare, and then during lockdown, I started making TikToks, as everyone did. I think everyone jumped on TikTok in lockdown and made them all sort of rugby themed. And since then, over those 2 years, it sort of blew up. And I managed to then go full time into content creation. So I'm now a content creator and a content lead for Ball Carrier Rugby, which is a sort of sports media channel. And then from that, I've grown into sort of a presenter as well. So things have moved very quickly over lockdown, and life has taken a big turn. But yeah, so now that's my full time job.
Awesome. So you said you were 12 when you first got into rugby. What kind
Yeah,
of,
so I was quite young.
yeah, that is I'm very surprised. I mean, I just joined like within the last year. I just started playing, and so I haven't even like this my first opportunity when I joined the team was when I saw that we had a team available. So that's awesome that you guys start very young. Who kind of motivated you to start, or who brought up that idea?
So I've got ADHD and I struggled at school. So I think a lot of rugby players seem to have the same thing. I don't know if it's like we attract everyone like that, but I think it was like I needed to channel my energy as a kid, and I was getting in trouble and I was getting in the wrong crowds. And I think my mum was just like signing me up to every single sport that was possible, just so I could like be doing something good for me rather than getting in the wrong crowd. So, and I loved it because I wasn't very good academically, but I felt that I had a talent with sport. So it was something that I enjoyed because I got praise from it, and I think that was something I fell into. So I did loads of different types of sports, but again, with the ADHD, I think I got bored quickly. So I would start something and then be like, oh no, it's not for me, and then try something else. And then if I wasn't any good at it, I'd stop straight away as well. So I wasn't very good at like getting myself to the point where, like you have to learn from scratch, Amy. You can't just jump in and be a pro. So did that. And then my PE teacher at the time was a rugby player, and I think that's not the case in most schools, to be honest. I think we got a bit lucky having him as a rugby player, and he started a girls' sort of tournament with the local sort of county, and we ended up going to Twickenham after winning that county tournament, and it was full contact rugby, and I just remember just the adrenaline and absolutely just loving it. And yeah, just the fact that there was that risk element and you could just sort of jump into people and it was like legal. I was like, this is great. So I think I sort of, yeah, after that, I didn't look at anything else and I just become obsessed with it. And yeah, just sort of haven't stopped since. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And did you like have a certain rugby player when you were younger that you looked up to?
So to be honest, as a child, I think I didn't know of any female rugby players that were professional at that time, because I don't think there were any professional female rugby players at that time. So for me, it was the sport that I loved. When I was young, I didn't actually watch much rugby, and because there wasn't much in terms of women's rugby that was that accessible in terms of like the channels to watch them on and stuff. Like if you wanted to watch women's rugby, you had to like hunt through all these links and things. And as a child, I think that was something I did. So I didn't have someone that I look up to, but I think as I've grown older, and as I now play as a woman, I can really relate to other women that play. And now with my job, getting to meet these people and work with them and watch them play and ask them questions, I think you definitely grow to be inspired by them. I think some names that really inspire me are Sam Monaghan and Neve Jones. They both play for Ireland. And where my mum's Irish, I sort of can support England and Ireland. So that's my thing. And then as a person, Ellie Kildan, who plays for England, just met her a handful of times, and she's always got time for you, and she's just very down to earth. And I think she's just someone like even just outside of rugby that I probably inspire to be like. So yeah, I definitely have inspirations now, but growing up there wasn't really those people that I knew of, and I think that goes to show how far women's rugby has come as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely agree with you there, where I think like a lot of women's sports too are now becoming more popular, and I really love that. I absolutely do.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think if like we can promote like any women's sport. So, I've done stuff with England cricket, and I've done stuff with like football, and things like that. So, yeah, as much as possible, I think it's just women supporting women, and I think that's just what the sort of community is, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the community, right now, are you playing or you're more doing like
So I'm
you're
still
working?
managing both somehow. So I'm managing to play, managing to play and also work in rugby. And the difficult balance with that is the fact that a lot of my work revolves around rugby matches, which are generally on the weekends when you'd play. So I do sometimes have to balance with like my team, sort of shifts and stuff, so that I can still manage to play. But I always go to training, and that's midweek, and I'll always make time for that. So I was there last night, and it was full contact, full smash, and so I'm limping around a little bit today, but and I'm a bit bruised up. But yeah, I come away and I just feel like amazing, and I think I also think what I would do when I get to the point where maybe I stop, and I think that's something that like almost freaks me out a little bit, because it becomes sort of your identity. And I think when it takes up a lot of your life, you start to think, oh God, like what would I do without it? So that's sort of how much it means to me and how much I love to get involved. So still playing, so I play second row as well. And so I am a forward now, but I started as a back as a child and worked my way through to the forwards as I got bigger and stronger. A lockdown weight, I think, did that, but there we go. And then, I play for Old Albanian Saints in St Albans. So, and then I also got into rugby league a little bit last year. So I play for Bedford Tigers as well. So it means I can do union and league. So I play rugby all year round.
Awesome. It's
Yeah,
interesting that you say that you also moved to become a forward, because I'm a back, and
nice.
like the forwards do so much. I'm like, and of course the backs do as well, but my first like practice that they were kind of like dividing us and figuring out where to go, one of our captains was like, "Oh, you should like come and be a forward with me," and I was like, "Absolutely not!" Like, no.
I know it is. I think when I compared to, I've been both. So it's like as a back, I think you got to read the game a lot more, and I guess it's more technical in terms of that and spacing and your runs and timings and all the different runs you can do and the flair and everything like that. But as a forward, it's more relying on like your physical strength and your carries and securing that ball. And I think when I moved over to the forwards, I actually enjoyed rugby to a whole nother level, because I realised actually my strengths were in that area. And I guess with the ADHD, it wasn't so much in like waiting and then having to react. So I'm better not waiting and just react without any hesitation. So I think I've improved as a player since I found my position. So I always encourage people, I think when you're new to rugby, you get put on the wing, and then people end up sort of just staying there. And I always encourage people to just try out different positions, because you can experience a different game of rugby as well. So I always say to people to, just explore your different strengths, because that's the beauty of rugby, is there's different positions for everyone, and they rely on different strengths. So that's a good thing about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you did start when you were super young. So I think I'm going to ask. So I want to ask, how were you so fearless and like just go into it with like, this is what I have to do? Because I know it can be so difficult sometimes when you see a huge, like, tall player sprinting at you in full speed. And I mean, when you started when you were so young versus now, I mean, do you still get nervous? Are you still like, oh,
Yeah, I think it's nerves are good for you, and I think I've learned that is like so I actually like get anxiety as well, so I have to like the lead up to games. I'm not very good at waiting, so the fact that when like a game's starting to actually go and play the game, I hate that bit. But as soon as I touch the ball, it's like I forget about everything that's worrying me and I just run and I just make an impact because you don't have time to think or worry. You just think, right, I've got the ball now. And actually, I've found out if you hesitate, you're actually more likely to get injured than if you to go and just fully commit. So I think now, like, I just fully commit and I drive through. And I think also I used to like absorb myself ready for contact, whereas now I like imagine myself going through that person. So I'm like driving forward, and it's less likely that you're going to get hurt in that situation if you do that. So I think it's always nerve-wracking, and I think especially coming from as a girl going into a women's team, I think that's a hard progression because you're used to be playing with like your under 18s and then you go into like a women's team. But generally people have got a lot of time to help the teammates and go through things like before training or after training. If you have any questions, people are always willing to like put that extra time in to help with that. And I just say be honest, tell your coaches like this is something I'm working on, but I'm still feeling a bit like I'm not the best in my tackling or not the best in my attacking or whatever it might be. And then just open up, and people are willing to spend time with you to work on them.
absolutely. I love that. I love what you said too about like just running right through them because I find
Yeah.
that too when you do hesitate, you'll get hit 10 times harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I love a handoff, so I always have the ball tucked in my hand ready to go, and I find that gives me confidence because I'm like, yeah, as long as my hand gets hit first.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever struggled from a injury?
Yes, so actually not too long ago I broke both my ankles at the same time.
Oh my gosh,
It
what?
was pretty savage, yeah. So like I I got tapped. So I don't really know. I feel like I had dodgy ankles anyway. So I'm like hypermobile, so I roll my ligaments quite easily. And prior to that game, I kind of rolled my ankle a little bit. So I don't know whether it was slightly injured before the game. Um, but yeah, I remember in that game thinking, right, don't take it in so much, like pass the ball more, because I remember thinking my ankles weren't feeling great. And I think because I changed up the way I was playing and I was really conscious of my ankles, I think it made me play differently and actually was worse for me. So I then got hit, and a big girl landed on top of me, and my feet were like underneath sort of my back, that makes
Oh,
sense.
oh my
And
God.
yeah, I just was like, ah! And then I just remember being like, like trying to breathe through it. And then the crazy thing was, the physio come over and everything, and I was like, yeah, like I can't move. And then swung my legs round to stand up, and as I stood up, I was like, oh, it's fine. Like I think it was just like I thought that like, oh, the pain had gone, but obviously it was just adrenaline and I didn't realise. And I walked off the pitch and then I went to the clubhouse. We had a pint. We like did a raffle and everything like that. And then I drove home like all with broken ankles without realising. And then that night, like I woke up in like agony where the adrenaline had obviously worn off. And then I went to hospital and they were like, yep, so you've done a pretty good job there. You've broken both your ankles. I don't know how you've been driving and walking around. So yeah, and they're still like not great. So I've got a hospital appointment next week to just check in on them and stuff. But I think it's the nature of of rugby, but also like most sports, you have to expect injury. So I think people get put off by the fact that you can get injured in rugby, but the reality is you can get injured in any sport. I did gymnastics. I broke both my wrists on different occasions and stuff. So I think it's just like any sport you get into, you know, you're pushing your body to the limit. You're gonna have times where your body's gonna cave at times. So yeah, it's difficult, and I think the hard thing with injuries is the impact it has probably on your mental health as well, because you're used to playing rugby to like help you as an outlet and stuff like that. And when you can't play and you're watching your teammates and stuff like that, I just find that's quite a challenging time as well. But I always say to people, like, still go to training, and still, like, you can even just pass the ball or get involved and just see everyone rather than sort of sit at home and stuff. So we actually have a rehab club at training now. And the physio runs like a rehab club where they do sort of exercises to help sort of people get back to full strength so that people aren't left out if they're injured. And I think that's a good thing that hopefully more clubs will end up doing. So yeah, I've had my fair few.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's both at one time, and that's so true about the adrenaline. Like, you have so much, and then it wears off, and then you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I can't move," you know? I'm like,
no,
wow.
no.
So you said you would still like go to practice and everything and pass and visit your teammates.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I think that's important to just keep in contact with everyone, especially if you can't actually play. Sometimes it's just good to chat to them, and you know, people want to know how you are, and also there's things you can learn just from discussions that are happening and things like that as well. So yeah, always stay involved, I'd say.
Absolutely, I love that. And I know you said that you play like all year round. Do you have an off season by any chance, or not at all?
Yeah, so for rugby union, like you'd have a off season and then you have pre-season and then you start again. So um the season's kind of just started actually. So we've only had like 2 or 3 games now. So that will run till probably like April time, May, and then May will be like off season. But I picked up rugby league, which is sort of more of a northern version of rugby, and it's slightly different rules and things like that. It's slightly different game, less players, and you don't have your scrums and rucks, and you don't have line outs and things like that. So it's quite a different game. So when we're in off season, I'll play rugby league. Um, and then I also do a bit of rugby sevens in the summer as well. So I just try and keep it going all year round, really, because different types of rugby have different communities as well. Like the rugby sevens community here, I'm not sure about where you are, but it's known as more of the fun side of rugby. It's like a lot of festivals are based around rugby sevens and stuff. So we have like big festivals here that have tournaments involved with them. So that's sort of like the summer like fun version of rugby, which I love. I look forward to that every year.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And in the times where you don't have that many games, will you still like go to the gym, lift, and like will your team go with you and everything like that?
Yeah, so I actually don't belong to a gym just because I'm trying to save as much money as possible. So I'll do like some home workouts and things like that. But generally, there's like boot camps going on. In lockdown, one of the girls did like a Zoom like boot camp, and we all joined in. But we're all quite local, so people tend to be able to like lean on each other for that. But a lot of the players I play with doing like rugby union will also play rugby league, so I generally see them at other tournaments, or I'm on their team for different games and stuff. So we stay in touch really all the time, and then we'll always do like socials on the side of that as well. So yeah, it's good fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And kind of non-rugby related, outside of, watching rugby and everything, what is your favorite thing to do? Like, what's your outlet?
Nice, I like that question. It's a hard one, and I'm actually working on trying to have a bit more of a work-life balance, and that's not necessarily like work life, it's like rugby and life. Because with playing rugby and now rugby being my job, it used to be like rugby's your thing that you did outside of work, but now my work is rugby. I have to like try and find something else. So I'll go hiking a lot. There's some really nice like countryside walks. Take the dogs out, go hiking, and yeah, I love that. And then I like cooking as well, so like making nice meals and having friends over. I'm quite a sociable person, so I like hanging out with people and doing that really. But yeah, I mean, in the summer and things, like we'd go and like play rounders in the park and like that kind of vibe as well is just good fun. So I just like to get out and about. I'm very family orientated as well, so see my family when I can, and go on holidays as well. Love a holiday.
Oh my
So
gosh,
yeah,
of course. Awesome. Very cool. And so, do you want to kind of also go more into what you do for presenting and work?
yeah, sure. So yeah, my role is like a content lead. So basically, are there to sort of promote women's rugby, but I also work with the men's side as well. So basically, a day to day, I would go to things like media days or launch days for games. So for example, the men are heading into the Autumn Nations at the moment, and the women are at the World Cup in New Zealand. And then you have the Premiership games, and then you have the Six Nations. So there's so many rugby tournaments that are like professional pro rugby tournaments or international tournaments. And I basically will go to these games with a microphone and be interviewing people in the fan base in the crowd, asking people just sort of like funny fan based questions, but also sort of who they're supporting, who like players that they sort of look out for. And then at the end of the game, we'll interview players as well. So interview them how they thought it was. And then aside from like games, we'll work with players to and brands as well. So I've done some projects with Red Bull recently in Jersey, where I flew over to Jersey with the England's men squad, and we went surfing and everything like that. So that content is coming out this week as well on Ball Carrier. So that's really exciting. So it's not always pitch side presenting. A lot of it can be around meeting with players or brands to promote the game outside of the actual games and get to know their personalities and things as well. So yeah, worked with Red Bull, Umbro, Adidas, Canterbury, like big brands. And yeah, it's crazy when I look back and I think it started from like making TikToks in lockdown. It just shows that I think you can create these jobs if you have the passion for it. And there wasn't a job role that like called what I'm doing. I had to actually go and ask people, if they'd consider having chats with me, and then we ended up having a discussion around what a job role would look like. So pretty much had to make my job from scratch. And coming up, I've got some presenting gigs, and I've got my first live presenting gigs coming up as well. So that's going to be really cool, and they'll be at Twickenham Stadium as well, and it should be a sellout. So there'll be 82,000 people there, which will be a lot. So my career is still like in its early stages, but it's growing very quickly. So I've only been doing it for 7 months, and in 7 months, like I've jumped in the deep end and done so much, and I'm really grateful that this is sort of my job really. But I'm looking forward to seeing what it will look like in a year's time as well.
That's so exciting, and congratulations. That's really,
Thank
really cool.
you.
Of course, of course. What do you think also that we could do to support women's sports and men's sports, of course, but I know that women's rugby is also becoming more popular. So what can
Yeah.
we do on our end on a day-to-day basis to sort of keep supporting women athletes as well as bringing them into the light more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the men and women need each other in rugby, and I think there's a little bit of a divide with that. And my sort of whole mission that I've sort of come in with is like everyone loves rugby as a sport, and it's seeing it like let's go and watch rugby, and it's not like women's rugby today, men's rugby. It's like it's just rugby, and we all love rugby. So let's trying to get people to shift their mindset into that. So if you would go and watch a men's game, it's the same sport being played by women. So I always encourage people to, a lot of the time as well, women's games are before men's games, and people still get there only for the men's game. So, will a couple of hours of your time to go and actually sit and watch the women's game and stuff like that. And buying tickets is obviously important, but also just promoting people like where to watch the game, so links to where to watch them, sharing times and who's playing who, generally creating a bit of a buzz around it. And then, engage with people on social media. I think the beauty of this day and age is that, you can reach millions of people from home. So, I think just promoting the game and telling your friends about it and why you love it as well, it also helps. But yeah, in general, I think we look at like England, women, the Lionesses that won the football, like won the Euros, and they sold out, like they got record breaking crowds, and they won the Euros. And since then, I think a lot more people have started to get on board, and England are heading into hopefully the World Cup final as well. So we're hoping that if that happens as well and England win the World Cup, that will also help people to say, these people are really good. It's not like a different version of rugby. It's still a really like incredible level of like pure talent. So yeah. And I personally have received a lot of stick and hate online. I think a lot of creators, female creators in the rugby space, receive quite a lot of kickback, and I think it's about calling those people out sometimes. So we had people commenting on videos like really nasty things, and we actually looked into like the person who was commenting, and we found out the club that he played for, and he was one of like the younger boys, so I think he was like 14, 15. We contacted the club and was like, we don't want to get this person in trouble. We just want to sort of enlighten you to the sort of comments that this one of your players is making, and whether you could provide some sort of training on social media or bullying or cyberbullying and stuff like that, and also educate them a bit on women's rugby. And their initial reaction was, we had no idea, we're going to ban this person from playing. And then we said, no, we don't want to ban anyone from playing rugby, because sometimes it's the troubled kids that need it the most. So we were like, we don't want to ban them from playing, but we do want them to just be educated and understand like what the impact of that could be on someone. So that young boy did a month of assistant coaching with the women's team at their club, and he had to go through training and things like that. And I feel like it's safe to say like he will never be making those comments again. So we try and educate people in that way, which is like, you have a right to stand up for yourself, and you have a right to speak out about your situation. And I think we're at the point now where it's at such a high level that people can't get away with saying what they can now. So a lot of brands as well are not going to get away with not covering women's rugby anymore as well. So, for example, there was a website before of a big brand who basically put female models in like women's rugby tops on the website, and then for the men's kit it was men's players. So they didn't actually put female players, they just put female models in the female stuff. So it started a big movement, and then they corrected themselves, and now they use players, and now all brands are like, we will never make that mistake. So now they're all using female rugby players. A recent example is like Gymshark just modelled their mannequins into real life athletes. So they're not using normal mannequins in shops, they're using actual bodies of athletes and Paralympians and rugby players and things like that. So I think it's calling people out in a way that's helpful and out of love, and trying to educate people rather than out of a place of like hate. So, and then you'll actually see practical changes. So it's amazing the way it's going. I think it's moving in the right direction at the moment. So
Absolutely. I love that. And everything you said too. I think starting with positivity and, explaining to people, not in like a rude way would be the best way to do it so it doesn't cause further issues.
Yeah, that's it. It's more just bringing it to their attention and then also giving them a bit of a solution. So rather than just saying, I don't like this, you're saying, have you thought about using female players to model your clothes, And then you're raising something with them, but you're giving them a solution and an idea. As well. So there's been a couple of occasions like that where we've been able to correct people and, you know, it might say like women's kit and then just like rugby kit. So now it says women's and men's. So like little tiny little things like that that actually do make the difference. It gives female sport that level of respect that it deserves.
I love that. Yes. And lastly, I want to know any advice you have for people who are just starting or
Yeah.
yeah, want to get into either rugby for playing or more of a career path.
So I'd just say, firstly, if you're worried about going to join a sport because you might not feel fit enough, you might feel intimidated, or that you're going to turn up and people are going to be like, oh, she doesn't know what she's going to do. And, I personally would just say rugby is a sport where you're accepted as who you are, any shape or size. And the beauty of it is you have, really small players to like really big players, and there's always a position for you on the pitch. And I think in terms of like body confidence, it helped me massively when, I was very body conscious and stuff about my weight and things. And when I went to rugby, I found that actually like having that strength and that weight behind you is actually like a massive positive. And then, so I just say, firstly, for that reason, it's very accepting. But also just in terms of meeting like a community of people that's like a family that really will care about you outside of rugby as well. That's another big reason why I always encourage people to go, because you've got like 50 new family members when you join. So I'd say that, and then it's fun and you're also doing fitness at the same time. And if you're anything like me, like I struggle to work out on my own. So I struggle with like the gym and working out on my own. And it's because there's not that like push of a team behind you. And when you're doing it for yourself, it's like, you're like, oh, I'll give up, or I'll stop there, or I'll do this. And like, I've not got the biggest willpower. So I think having the teammates around you will just push you to do that extra bit of work. And yeah, it's something that makes you focus on yourself as well, a bit of self-care. So yeah, I feel like there's not many negatives, so give it a
Absolutely.
go.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was great. And right before we go, I do want you to say your social medias if you want to. No pressure, but
Yeah.
so people can go check you out.
Perfect. Yeah, so it's just Rugby with Amy on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube as well. And yeah, it's just the same on every channel, so nice and easy.
Yeah, okay, super exciting. Thank you so much for joining, and it was really cool. And everyone listening, definitely go check it out if you would like. And it'll be all linked on my Instagram as well, so you can go check it out there too. So thank you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.